What does pressing mean? Pressing is the attempt by a defending team to take the ball from the opponent through one or more direct tackles. The transition to pressing involves risks. In order to put pressure on the person with the ball, they often have to give up space elsewhere, spaces that the opponent can use to score. Defenders must engage in tackles, always with the risk that the opponent will win the battle. So players on a team should think carefully about when and how they transition to pressing. In fact, this transition to pressing is the part of defensive tactics that coaches invest a lot of work in these days. Pressing offers great opportunities. Ideally, the defending team wins the ball, catches the opponent on the wrong foot and can immediately launch a counterattack. Risks and opportunities are high on both sides when pressing. Accordingly, hardly any team simply charges forward unsystematically, hoping to win the ball somehow. Aggressiveness with a system, that's the order of the day. The level of pressing. Since pressing can take place all over the field, it makes sense to distinguish between the different types of pressing by where they take place. The division of the field into 3/3 has become established. If the opponent is only attacked in the back third, but not in the front 2/3, this is called defensive pressing. If a team allows the opponent to set up the game in its third, but then starts pressing in the middle third, this is called midfield pressing. If a team disturbs the opponent all over the field, it is called attack pressing. The opponent should not get time on the ball, he should be involved in battles all over the field. Like so many concepts in football, this one is also rather crudely designed. What factors must be considered in order to play a good pressing? Create pressure on the player with the ball. Actually, the attacker on the ball always has an advantage. He can act, the defender has to react. Every footballer knows this. If you have the space and the time, it's easy to make good decisions. If, on the other hand, the opponent gives you neither, you can easily panic and make mistakes. If you exert a lot of pressure on the opponent, you increase the likelihood of winning the ball. Pressing is meant to cause unrest and is always a bit of psychological warfare. Taking options, the more options the player with the ball has, the more likely he is to choose a successful option. If there are 3 free players in his area, he will probably be able to see one of these 3 players and pass to him. If there is only one free player, there is a chance that he will miss him or that the pass will go astray. If there is no free player, panic quickly reigns. The fewer options the player has on the ball, the better it is for the defending team. Creating superior numbers. In order to take away the options of the player on the ball, the team should create superior numbers near the ball when pressing. The more defenders attack the player with the ball, the higher the pressure. And the more defenders cover the near face-off areas, the fewer options the player on the ball has. However, superior numbers near the ball naturally have a negative side effect. In other areas, the defending team is outnumbered. Finding the balance is crucial. The place of pressing, as just defined, a distinction is made between defensive, midfield and attacking pressing. Roughly speaking, the further forward a team wins the ball, the better the chances of a good counterattack. If you win the ball 5 meters from the opponent's penalty area, you can immediately start shooting at goal. If, on the other hand, you win the ball 5 meters from your own penalty area, you still have a long way to go before you reach the opponent's goal. On the other hand, the level of pressing also increases the risk. If a team attacks with several players in the opponent's half, there is a chance of being outnumbered in their own half. The primary goal of the defense preventing a goal against should be in danger. Nowhere else is the tension between winning the ball and preventing a goal more evident than in the choice of where to press. Securing and protecting, pressing does not always lead to winning the ball right away. In this case, it is all the more important that the defenders support each other. Behind the players who go over to the duel, the colleagues should secure the ball. If a team is playing attacking or high pressing, for example, the defense should not remain in its own penalty area. The opponent would have large spaces in the midfield that it could play in. The teammates therefore move forward, keep the distances small and provide cover for their colleagues. And behind the cover, ideally, another cover should also help out. Covering the cover is called covering through. Pressing triggers. It is crucial that all players in a team know exactly when the team is switching from a passive style of play to pressing. If, for example, 8 players move up, but 2 are asleep, the protection is no longer given. This increases the risk that the pressing will go wrong. So when do the players switch to pressing? How do they know which situation is the right one? Every team has its own procedures. In most cases, pressing begins after a signal. This is not an acoustic signal after all, players don't walk around with a whistle in their mouths. Rather, it is a specific action by the opponent or a specific space into which the ball is played. Situations that initiate a team's pressing are called pressing signals. In training, teams practice which actions of the opponent they will press and which ones they will remain passive. This idea is well illustrated by a practical example from Arrigo Sacchi's AC Milan. Sacchi's tactics were based on a space-oriented defense. The players were supposed to move across the field together and keep their distances from each other even. If the opponent passed the ball between the centre-backs, his team would just move behind. But as soon as the opponent played a pass to the full-backs, they went over to press. This pass was the signal to move aggressively on the ball, it was their pressing signal. Why did Sacchi choose this pass to the fullback as the pressing signal, and why did the pressing of his Milan team work so well? Here, a look at the principles of good pressing is recommended. The wing is an interesting place to start pressing. In the center, a player can theoretically pass the ball in any direction. On the wing, the line is a natural barrier. The handling options for the opponent are limited by the outline. Sacchi's team therefore had to cover fewer possible options. It was enough to cover the passing routes back from the wing to the center and directly to the front and back. To create superior numbers, several players from Sacchi's team moved toward the wing. One or two players attacked the opponent on the ball. Other players tried to block the way back to the center. The specific purpose of the overcount was to further limit the player's options on the ball. In order to put the opponent under pressure, the entire team moved to this side in full sprint. Above all, the player who entered the duel ran at full speed toward the outside defender with the ball. The outside defender, deprived of his options for action, had to make a decision under pressure. In Sacchi's day at the end of the 80s, this was a brilliant idea, since full-backs were usually the technically weakest players in a team. Many of them made mistakes under pressure. Sacchi's team was able to win the ball not only by winning duels, but also by mispassing the opponent. Attacking the opponent's first pass on the wing also ensured that the ball was won around, sometimes even far before, the center line. The path to the opponent's goal was relatively small, and a good counterattack was thus immediately possible. So it's a passable place to win the ball. The entire team pulled together around the ball. The defense moved up, the outside player from the other side into the center. There was always a clearing near the ball. Although Sacchi's team left the space on the other wing free, a long pass to the other side could cancel out this pressing. But that was also a calculation, a short pass is easier to play than a long one. Hardly any opponent could play the long pass to the free wing precisely under pressure. In addition, as mentioned above, in Sacchi's day, fullbacks were among the technically weaker players. Pressing traps. After the Prasis example, the question arises, if the attacking team knows exactly what the pressing signal is, why doesn't it simply avoid the action? Why did Sacchi's opponents play the ball to the fullbacks in the first place? At some point they must have realized that this action was exactly what Sacchi's team wanted. This was due to the preparation that Sacchi's team put into the pressing. As soon as they moved the ball, they made sure to steer the opponent in the desired direction. The defenders positioned themselves in such a way that the opposing defenders had no choice but to pass the ball to the outside defender. Sacchi's players covered all other passing routes with their cover shadow. They virtually forced the opponent to choose which pass to play. And as soon as the pass came, their trap snapped shut. Start-up behavior in pressing. To put the opponent under pressure, defenders have different options. In the Milan example, the fullback was attacked in a full sprint. In this case, the defending player ran directly towards the outside defender. He could slow down to get into the duel or run towards him in a full sprint, and risk colliding with him. Both are possible ways of running towards the opponent. The direct sprint at the opponent is only one option. Another option would be to run at the opponent in an arc. The outside forward runs at him slightly offset. This way he can work with his cover shadow and block a pass path for the opponent. If he wants to guide the opponent back to the center, for example, he will run at him slightly from the side. This way of running at the opponent is called an arc-shaped run. This knowledge about the different forms of running at the opponent is important to understand the second practical example. The pressing of Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. This example combines the idea of the pressing signal with the idea of pressing traps. The three players in front moved far into the opponent's half, right up to the opponent's penalty area. There, they closed off the play stations. But they didn't start pressing. In the small area around their own penalty area, the opponents were allowed to pass the ball first. Maybe they wouldn't even try to get through against the highly positioned Liverpool players, but instead play the ball long? But Liverpool's opponents rarely did that. In the Champions League, Liverpool faced clubs like Bayern München, FC Barcelona, and Tottenham Hotspur. They were all teams that rely on flat passes. Accordingly, these three teams tried to open the game against Liverpool not with long balls, but with short, flat passes. So the most important task for Liverpool was to steer the opponent's flat passes in the right direction. In the truest sense of the word, Liverpool used sophisticated pressing traps to force the opponent's passing routes. If the opponent started the build-up of the game with a pass next to the penalty area, Liverpool went over to pressing. However, this did not happen in a raid-like manner. A player first moved from the outside on the ball-carrying player. He was aware that the player on the ball could not play a pass on the outside lane. To do this, he ran at the opponent in an arc, always paying attention to the fact that the opposing fullback disappeared behind him in the cover shadow. In these situations, Liverpool were set up in such a way that only one pass path remained free for the opponent, the one to the center. However, there was already a Liverpool player lurking there. He immediately put the player with the ball under pressure. To do this, he ran at him in a full sprint and sought physical contact as soon as the ball was with the opponent. When Liverpool won the ball like that, it was optimal. The other players covered the options for action for the opponent around the ball, but also set a small pressing trap here, the ball on the outside. Liverpool's fullback got ready to move forward as soon as the pass was played. If the ball came to the outside, the next pressing trap was already waiting. At the latest here Liverpool had the opponent. The opposing player was isolated on the outside, the central defender behind him was covered by the player who started the pressing. The center pillar who had played the ball to him was also covered by the player who had attacked him before. And the ball-carrying player himself immediately faced an opponent who ran at him in a full sprint. Liverpool acted like a snake in the pressing, gradually choking off their prey from the air.